Greetings, this is Griff Ruby with my first movie review that I've ever done as part of what I'm calling Nostalgia Catholic. So, unfortunately, unlike some of my more prosperous people that I pay homage to by taking the name Nostalgia Catholic, Nostalgia other things, um, who have, they've got clips of the movie, they've got special effects, and you can really get into the great humor. Unfortunately, I don't have that. But I did get to see A Wrinkle in Time. And let's just start out a little back history, very short here. I read this book a long time ago as a child, and my mom bought an original hardcover edition from when it was still a brand new, newly published book back in the 1960s. So I grew up with it. I've known it. I read it a few times, and I know the book really well. I've always kind of enjoyed it, and I've always thought it would make a great movie. I have to agree with that. For the person who made it has also kind of had the same thought. They, of course, managed to have a whole movie production behind nobody behind them, and they can do it with a lot of tremendous CGI effects. It was neat. I'll start out by saying it's a good film. It's worth seeing, despite some things we'll get to that I think, in some ways almost rather seriously injure it, but it still ends up being a really good film. But let's start with the parts that really work. I mean, I'm assuming if you're familiar with the story of A Wrinkle in Time, you got the girl whose father and her little brother, Meg, and little brother Charles Wallace. They always call him Charles Wallace, never just Charles or Chuck or Charlie. It's always Charles Wallace. Don't know why it's in the book. That's in the movie too. Good. Okay. She's Meg Murray, and then there's also the other kind of like kind of becoming a boyfriend guy, Calvin, who kind of helps, has a pretty good role in the whole thing too, and goes along for the whole journey. So that's great. But and, her father was in some weird experiment where he did this tesseract, this way of going to some far off corner of the universe, 91 billion light years away, basically. So that's pretty cool. Except for let's start. We'll get back to that, like I said. Now let's start with some of the stuff that works. So she goes through the adventures. There's these three ladies, Mrs. What's It, Mrs. Who, and then Mrs. Witch, which is kind of a pun on is it witch like a witch casting spells, or like witch like the question which one, which this, which witch is which kind of thing. Okay, it's kind of a pun. So she's kind of Miss Witch, and with the help and guidance of these three mysterious figures, she's able to tesseract to various planets that eventually end with her landing where her father has been trapped for 4 years on a planet called Camazotz. And he's been trapped there, and basically she rescues him from this weird disembodied brain that runs that planet called It. That's a good name. It. We're taking you to It. And it all ends up all happy because she brings father back and so on. And there's a few other events, and we'll get into some of that as we get into what does and doesn't work with the movie. So, starting with the stuff that works, the casting of all the central characters of the family. Meg herself, awesome. I'll grant, not what I would have pictured when I read the book all those years, but the little actress they had, she's Meg. She is Meg. And I have to say, from now on, I think she will always be Meg in my mind. No matter what I might have pictured before, she is Meg. She did it flawless. They made her look perfect. I mean, she's kind of attractive in her way, and yet they made her dirty with, horn-rimmed glasses and, and hair that kind of always seems to be a little out of control, and just kind of nerdy ways. She's supposed to be this brain. She got it from her father, who's this brilliant genius that he's involved in this Tesseract project. Okay, so far so good. Okay, the little baby brother is even smarter in a way, a real whippersnapper, really smart guy, but a good little boy, all of that. And the casting for him, I think, was flawless. I mean, that the guy is, in fact, he really is what I would have pictured as Charles Wallace. So he is Charlie Wallace. That casting, It's like somebody looked in my brain and said, "What do you think? Who do you think should be Charles Wallace?" And the little actor they got for that part is what I pictured, and a very good actor. I think he really handled he's this lovable, smart little boy who defends his sister and cares about her until it takes over and turns him into this other sort of nasty being, that it wants to make everyone into. And, until at the end she rescues him. So that it's like she had to rescue not only her father from Camazons, but part of that got Charles Wallace trapped and seduced by it. She has to draw him away from it. So that too is a big part of the motif, and most of that's still in the movie. So that's not too bad. So that part worked. The mother, credible. Calvin, I think he was good cast. They were well cast. They're well played. The father, yeah. I mean, like I said, the only person who didn't look what I would have expected was Meg. And like I said, I think that little actress has just changed my whole conception of what Meg should look like anyway. So, more power to you. More power to you. You did great. Now, some of the other casting decisions don't work. And mostly in particular, the three lady beings that help them. I mean, Miss Whatsit. Okay, she's supposed to be the youngest. She's only a few thousand years old. But the lady they had here, maybe the actress could have done, a more credible job as Miss Whatsit, I suppose. I don't know. I think she had to work with lines that were not very good. She ends up coming across as somebody who literally was born yesterday, not as somebody who's thousands of years old. Mrs. Who, I don't know what they were thinking when they cast, what they did for Mrs. Who. They should have found some really old woman, I think I kind of picture somebody like, go back to the 1960s or 70s. You remember the old lady who plays T'Pau in that, Spock's Planet, A Mock Time, Celia Lovsky. She give her these really thick glasses, that like little magnifying glasses, make her eyeballs look too large when she wears them, and have her look very mysterious and old and wrinkly, That should, her glasses, that should be Mrs. Who. That should have been Mrs. Who. Somebody like that, Instead, who is this lady? What is she? The Chiquita Banana Lady? I'm sorry, but it doesn't work. And then Miss Witch. Witch is, in the book, and for good reasons, Witch is supposed to be the most. See, Mrs. Who is like hundreds of thousands of years old. So she's kind of the middle. And Miss Witch is like, who knows how old? She could be older than the universe or something. Who knows? She's the most inscrutable one of all. You barely ever see even the faintest hints of a human form. She's so almost completely in the other dimensions. So, Miss Witch, very little conversation, but she's the one who, like the big bell, bong comes in, it is now time, we must tesseract. And whoosh, and she makes it happen. Miss Witch is probably the most inscrutable one of the three. Instead, what I saw was Della Reese and Roma Downey. Remember Touched by an Angel, Tess and Monica, with Oprah as Tess, very obviously, with the young lady who, as the actress names escape me, playing Miss Whatsit as Monica, especially in the earlier seasons where Tess is this wise old angel who's been there and knows all this, and Monica, the young, inexperienced, kind of born yesterday person who needs some talking down to from time to time, especially in the earlier seasons. After a while, the Monica character kind of matures and becomes more credible. But in the opening, few seasons, she's always kind of bouncing off the walls and so forth. And that was that relationship all over again. It's a retread. It's Touched by an Angel all over again, except you got Miss Chiquita Banana in the middle for not very much of any clear reason that I could see. Okay. So the casting, and I don't want to discourage the quality of the actors, but if you could go back some years, Peter Lorre, picture that Peter Lorre's around and he's available as an actor. We're talking 1930s or whatever. Is he a great actor? Absolutely. Would you cast him in the role of Abraham Lincoln? 4 score and 7 years ago, our forefather. No. It would just be wrong. Peter Lorre as Abraham Lincoln. No, you wouldn't do that. And I'm sorry, but the casting decisions for the three ladies is just that wrong. Not to disparage the actresses as actresses. Peter Lorre was great, and these ladies are great as actresses, but they are not, well, maybe borderline Miss Whatsit if she didn't act so clueless and Born Yesterday. But, Miss Who and Miss, Witch, no. They're as wrong as Peter Lorre for Abraham Lincoln. They really are. The casting is wrong. So we get right there to the other part. And then the guy with the red eyes. I think I finally figured out who he is. Anybody ever see a movie? It's about the Beatles. Was it My Universe? Something about Across the Universe. They made a Beatle movie of all these songs. And they have this kind of weird guy with a funny circus top hat, and he's the one they do with the Flying Circus, the Flying Circus one, and the guy's just all, it's that guy, except his eyeballs are red. Once he takes off his dark glasses, his eyeballs are red, and that, in the book, there's a man with red eyes. He sits on a chair, and he barely even ever moves from the chair. Can he even move from the chair? You don't know from the book. In here, he's sitting on a beach with beachcombers under umbrellas, with the crashing waves just 100 feet away, and everybody having snacks and this and that. And here they decided to do the scene where everybody, where people taste the food. And young Charles Wallace says, it all tastes like sand. At least they kept that. Why did they transposition that? They didn't have to. It's just kind of weird. But then we get to other things that really didn't work. Well, let's get back to some of the stuff that did work. Okay, the house, the dark, stormy night. Just the characters, the situations, the little glimpses of Meg and her troubles in school. Beautifully done, seamlessly done. I mean, don't even try to improve it. They got it. They got that stuff bone right, absolutely right, beautiful. But when they get to Camazotz, okay, there's a brief scene where all the children are bouncing the balls, boom, 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 in perfect unison. And there's Charles Wallace saying, "This rhythm, I hate it." You know what? After a couple minutes of this, all the little mothers come out at once and say, "Children, it's time to come in and have dinner." The children stop bouncing the balls, go in. Bye-bye rhythm. Never comes up again. Now, unfortunately, that's a major part because it is always controlling its whole world of Camazotz and anything else it can control with this rhythm. It always whips you back in line every moment. Everything it wants you to do, jammed back in your brain every second, on the second. Boom, boom. Plus, why is it all the kids were bouncing balls? I suppose some of them should have been bouncing rope, to the same rhythm, you see? Boom, 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 But no, it's all just balls standing in the middle of their driveway. Boom, boom. It's like they didn't, I wanted to see the rest of that. They cut out a little subplot. I could be okay with this, where one of the boys drops his ball, they return the ball, they knock on the door, and the boy grabs it, and the mother's just like acting weird, like, "What's the matter with you? How come you're not like everybody else?" And later you see this same little boy in some chamber being forced brainwashed with his rhythm. He's got to bounce the ball, and every time he does, until he learns when the rhythm goes, you bounce the ball. You don't make mistakes ever. With that same motif of the rhythm. And then when you get to see it should have been this brain, and they see it. You couldn't get near it. I mean, I don't care how they make it, force fields or just you get that close, you can't bring yourself to squish it as much as you might wish you could. But at any rate, it's not. Instead, I guess you're supposed to be the inside of a brain. But then it's also kind of this weird sort of tentacle handy sort of lighted thing that kind of slaps people around a little bit inside the brain. Meet it. And this kind of handy thing comes out, and you can't shake hands with it. It just slaps you around. This is it. That part didn't work. The rescuing of, okay, some of it. Now, they go to another planet first. They do this in the book. First is just the first Tesseract get in the neighborhood. They're going to meet up with a happy medium. That's good. And here, they get to this planet. They run around. It's all neat and interesting. And what has this got to do with getting a father? There's no preparation. There's no explanation of what's going on. There's no nothing. They're just running around looking at stuff. Except for one cool, there's some beautiful scenery. Some of these weird things kind of sticking up out of the ground, and really weird high mountains and stuff. It actually, some of the scenery does look great. So that worked. Watching Miss What's-It turn into a giant flying cabbage leaf. I hate to say, I'm not usually one to recommend deviating from the books, but in this case, I think a giant flying cabbage leaf is more persuasive than what happens in the book, that she turns into My Little Pony and they get on her back and she sprouts wings and flies off, like Pegasus or something. So that's an improvement, but I can accept that one. That was okay. But they don't fly anywhere. There's these high mountains you see in the background, which in the book they would have flown to at some point. They don't. Instead, they're just flying around, and then Calvin falls down and gets cut by a bunch of flowers. Nobody has to breathe through the flowers as a source of air like in the book. Why? I'm just kind of wondering that. So, like I said, there's a lot of really interesting stuff. It was great to see all that. But the one thing that really, should have been there and wasn't, and the thing that just isn't in the book, they say to Meg, you have something that it has not. And Meg is just, she's going to go back, she's already got Father out, and Calvin's back home, and now it's just Meg going in by herself to see if she can rescue Charles Wallace, who is totally under its influence, and he, also, with the rhythm and so forth, as he sits contentedly next to the branch, with the man, maybe the man in the red eyes is there too, or maybe, I don't know. But anyway, so instead, and she's got to try to win, and she's thinking, what does she have that it does not? She can't figure it out. She can't figure it out. I got all these faults. It's powerful. It's smart. It's brilliant. It's got all these things. It knows everything. It controls everything. It can do all this great stuff. What has it got that? What have I got that it has not? And somehow she figures it out. Love. That's what I have that it does not. Brilliant. Awesome. Great. And then the next step. This is the kicker. This is the book just going that one step beyond. In the book, she thinks, what am I supposed to do? Just start trying to love it, and maybe it'll just shrivel up and die right there? She can't bring herself to do that. But she solves the problem. I can love Charles Wallace. I can love Charles Wallace. And she does. And that pulls him out, and that enables her to rescue him, and so on. To have left that out is just wrong. And that really, it denudes it. Now, there's one other thing that got missed. Now, I'll start by admitting even the book didn't do this terribly well. And that's the Tesseract. You have a little thread and a spider or ant or whatever crawling from one end to the other. So now let's just bring these two little points together. And there we go. Now the spider goes right from the other to the other. Well, how does that work? What does that mean? Best explanation I've ever seen for a Tesseract is actually in compilation by Arthur C. Clarke of all his versions of the stories and drafts of stuff that were going into his eventual novel to go with the movie of 2001, where they actually explain how space doesn't have to be flat and Euclidean. It could be have different shapes. It could be spherical, conical, negatively curved, all these different kinds of shapes that space could have. And why not have shape just be so wrinkled that actually, even though if you had to travel through the plane of space or the three space of space, it'd be this long distance, but maybe because it's so wrinkled and twisted up, you might actually be just a very tiny distance from some other place, that would be this long distance to go around, but just a little short distance, boop, out of your plane and over and into the next, wrinkle. And it's like, oh, it's not really a wrinkle in time, it's a wrinkle in space. That's a tesseract. That's the best explanation you'll ever see. So the movie, the book tries to do that, not as well. It's there, but it's not as well. The previews for the movie actually have her explaining the same little thing in the classroom. That's not in the movie. In the movie, we're just gonna hold hands and we're gonna tesseract and find this magic frequency, and just the whole universe starts quivering and shaking and rippling. Actually, that looks pretty cool. I'll give it that. That looked pretty cool. And suddenly, next thing you know, you're in this other part of the universe, 91 billion light years away. Shazam! So, it's a fun movie. Definitely see it. I just feel there's some things that needed to be there. Things that could have been done briefly, and definitely some casting decisions, and sometimes where it just looked like they've got all these great special effects they can do, let's use them. I mean, I'm sorry, but there's just a little too much of that. Camazotz didn't look, it's supposed to look like a place that's real, even, where the evil is real. It's a fictitious world. And I don't know, it just didn't. It just didn't work there. But I did like that one scene where they're flying to see the evil up there. In the book, it's just this kind of amorphous dark cloud surrounding the planet of Camazotz that they see from a neighboring planet. And here, it's more than this dark cloud. It's got these weird, menacing tentacles working out like snakes off of Medusa's head. I mean, the thing looks evil. It's marvelous. That was cool. So, I mean, there's definitely some things that really work. And there's other things that could have really worked if someone had thought to put them in there. Like the bit about, Meg discovering that what she has that it is not is love, and then loving Charles Wallace until he comes back. Well, she does love Charles Wallace, so that's what happens. But the whole thing that leads up to that moment is missing. It's just there all of a sudden. If you haven't read the book, it probably wouldn't make a bit of sense if you're watching it in a film. And that's never good when you have to have something that's in the book that you have to have read the book in order to make any sense of the movie. If you're going to make a movie, and especially make it so different from the book, you better make it able to stand on its own, and that doesn't do that. The other thing is, what you miss. You didn't have to put a whole lot more in there. And the other thing was, you didn't have to have the man with the red eyes on the beach. You didn't have to have him acting like that. What do you call that guy? Anyway, you didn't have to have him. Let's see, like master of ceremonies at a circus or something kind of character, and you didn't have to have Miss What's-It acting like she's born yesterday. That doesn't work. That's probably the one place that just so falls flat on its face. And it's a mixture of the good and the bad. You have an idea now. That's what I have to say. Thank you.